You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. I'm super excited about today's episode. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Excited as well. This is Ivan Zach, and I'm excited to introduce, or I think reintroduce, Emmitt Nantz. So Emmitt is a friend of mine, and he was the brain power and chief operating officer in SmartFlow with me, but he carries the MBA and he is the co-founder of Inventory Ally, and that's why he's today here. Emmitt has been a part of veterinary family for nearly 2 decades, spearheading large-scale operational improvements for Banfield, IDEXX, and Galaxy Vets. His education includes an MBA, a black belt in Six Sigma. It's so cool always saying black belt in Six Sigma. It's like you're a ninja. And the project
Sounds cool, doesn't
the
it?
project management certification. In pursuit of passion for work and optimization, he co-founded Inventory Ally, a cloud-based software designed to help veterinary hospitals reduce inventory costs, streamline process, and save time. Emmitt, welcome to the show. Good to see you here again.
Pleasure. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for the invite.
So, tell us what Inventory Ally is, if people don't know what it is about. Tell us what you're trying to optimize, and what gets you excited every day.
Well, inventory management gets everybody excited, doesn't it?
If they are the same thing, you can talk about two things if they're not the same thing.
What gets me excited is actually simplifying process for veterinary hospitals. Kind of my soapbox that I tend to get on is veterinary medicine is a service industry, and therefore it is really about focusing on delivering value through the engagement for the professional team at the hospital. And there's a ton of stuff that distract them from doing that. So that's the basis of how I do what I do, why I do what I do. And inventory management's a focus right now because it takes a ton of time. It's the second largest expense on the P&L, and nobody does it well. And I say nobody does it well with confidence because the tools that are available right now don't work very well. Number one being PIMS, and that's because PIMS uses transactional data to try to estimate inventory consumption. But half of the inventory doesn't even transact through the PIMS. They're soft goods, they're white goods that need replenished because they're consumed in the hospital, they don't transact. But even a big chunk of the things that do transact are packaged services that assume static consumption. And so we actually have a lot of variability. Every time we provide that procedure, it's a little bit different for each pet. So the data is always incorrect, and what it does is it leaves people chasing their tail, trying to get some sense of predictability from the data so that they can replenish it. End result is they're just running around each day trying to make sure they don't run out of stuff. They end up with a ton of excess, which inflates costs, wastes time, and it distracts them from doing what they should be doing, which is providing care to pets and their owners.
That's so awesome. And now let's talk about all the exciting stuff. Sorry, I just had to go there. So Emmitt, I know your co-founder, Nicole. She's wonderful. I actually met her for the very first time in person at the show in Orlando that just happened, VMX, the biggest trade show in the world, that has kind of the most influential pet pinch competition in the world that you guys just won, which is a really big deal. I won it 3 years ago, and it was really cool to watch your pitch because you had some pretty stiff competition, and you're just coming off winning a pitch competition at the Veterinary Innovation Summit. So you're kind of on a roll, and I never did that. I didn't win 2 in a row. That must have felt pretty cool for you and Nicole. I know you guys have put a ton of work in there, and just wanted to ask how it felt and like what's been the outcome of that so far.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that, Sean. It feels fantastic, mainly from the basis of the recognition that this is a value that the industry needs. Inventory management is something nobody likes to talk about. They assume it's hard. They assume it's difficult. And to be able to pitch...
Nobody except Nicole, because it was 3 years ago. She was talking about inventory management very excitedly.
Very excitedly. There's few people like Nicole and I who get excited about inventory management, but everybody can feel the pain of it. And so we're trying to make it super simple. And, Nicole's done a great job of focusing on how can you optimize the tools you have. And by her and I coming together, we're creating better tools to make it even easier for you. So coming off those pitch wins, we're going up some really good AI type softwares that can be very advanced. But Inventory Ally was recognized as solving a very root cause problem that a lot of people have with a high likelihood of success. So it's kind of the criteria for winning those, and appreciate the recognition from the industry.
The thing that I would say is like after we won it, we 19x'd our growth that year. Like, because it was like that validation that the work that we were doing at Talk To is making a difference. And so I think that's what's in store for you guys. Are you guys ready for that? You guys ready to have 19 times more customers next year?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, I think we could all recognize that, right? To grow, especially grow a small SaaS business, it's always chicken and egg conversations. What comes first, right? Do you get the growth or do you enable the growth? And which one comes first? And so always balancing that. But we've been making a lot of modifications in anticipation of that growth to increase our scalability. But one of the key components of Inventory Ally is built on customer success design. We're not just trying to sell a product. We're trying to sell a solution, and we want to make sure that every customer recognizes the value of that solution, short-term and long-term. So we intentionally put some limitations within our scalability to ensure that we deliver value as well, and we'll always be balancing that. Coming off of the two pitch competition wins and the recognition there, we're having some phenomenal conversations with large groups, both enterprise buying groups, distributors. So a lot of attention and focus within those types of conversations so that we can enable scale with partnerships.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And that's a great way to grow. So, the industry's been going through some bumps. First we had COVID, big shortage of work staff. People want to raise prices to kind of keep up with inflation. Hiring staff is really hard. All of these revenue streams that were once like super logical for veterinary medicine are changing a little bit. How do you guys at Inventory Ally kind of help your customers with these things that are like a real and present kind of danger to their business?
Phenomenal question, Sean. I really appreciate that. If we take a look at the last 2 to 3 years, we're coming off of high multiples, a lot of consolidation. That slowed down. Cost of capital is extremely expensive right now. We look at last year, prices increased 10%. They're not going to increase this year that same amount. And on top of that, we're seeing year over year pet visits are down. So a lot of hospitals are facing flat to even potentially negative growth on their revenue line. Labor, their biggest expense, is difficult to pull because it's still constrained, it's highly competitive, and the only potential you have to grow in a service business is to add labor to provide that service. So cost of goods sold being the second highest expense on the P&L is the opportunity. In fact, I say 2024 is the year of the COGS, because if your multiples are down, if you're looking to sell, that those multiples are on EBITDA, you have to add money to EBITDA. You can't do it in revenue, you can't do it in labor. COGS is where it's at. So we're really focused on that. The other piece is there's three main things that come out of Inventory Ally as outcomes. One, we save you hours every week. We simplify it. We make inventory management predictable. We give you a lot of time back so you can put that towards serving patients and clients. Number two, we reduce the inventory value on hand, so the inventory on the shelf, by 30 to 40%. That is working capital that's super expensive now. You can take that money off the shelf and reinvest it elsewhere. But that consolidation of inventory with increased inventory turnover actually puts, on average, we're putting 200 to 400 basis points or increasing EBITDA by 2 to 4 percentage points simply by adding some predictability and efficiency to the inventory management system. So that kind of overarching, we're addressing that high cost of capital, decreased multiples, as well as the inability to try to drive revenue necessarily like we have in the past.
Let me add something that I love doing, bashing consolidators. The most models that we've seen in veterinary medicine are based on arbitrage. So you buy a bunch of hospitals, stack them together, and then hopefully get a higher multiple, not anymore 26, but in low 20s to sell the platform. And that's fun and all there until you leverage yourself to the point where everybody did before 2022, 23, when the interest rates went up. And then all of a sudden you're squeezing your EBITDA and it starts tripping the covenants on their bank loans that they took to buy hundreds and hundreds of hospitals. And all of a sudden they're in the pickle of, how do we operate these hospitals more profitable? Because right now we have a push on our EBITDA. What can we shed as fast as possible? And that's why we're seeing big platforms that are firing basically all the business development people, operators, technicians I've seen fired because they need to save their EBITDA, where the answer could be in something as I don't want to simplify it, but the answer is simple. The technology behind it is sophisticated. Is what you're building is in reducing the cogs. So I think that you truly are right now in the very right time and the right place for this, because there's nothing else that these consolidators know how to do, because they clearly don't know how to operate the hospitals other than maintaining what they bought. The improvement is not there. It's really hard to go into the hospital and make any changes because you need to change cultural changes and everything else. So COGS is what they have. And I think that this is phenomenal for you, and that's why you're engaging in these conversations. I want to add a question at the end of that, a little bit more selfish. I've been building urgent cares recently, and I'm trying to figure out, because inventory is one piece, is that when you're building a new hospital, you're not focusing on it. You're just buying stuff, you put it on the shelves, and then very quickly I start focusing on it. When I know that your system is based on historical data, so ideally you should have a couple of years of historical data, understand what you were buying this month or this week last year, and that's how the predictability comes into place to tell you what to order this year, because most likely you're going to be in the same sort of spot. What can you suggest to new hospitals that's been in operation only a couple of months or half a year? When can we start using Inventory Ally in the new builds rather than the existing hospitals?
Yeah, there's a lot wrapped up in that the statement as well as that question. But we first recognize the statement that you made, because it's true. There's a lot of outside industry money that came in, really focused on those arbitrage opportunities, which was, buy them at 10, sell them at 20 type of thing. When those multiples started to come down, it's really how do we actually operate profitability, and goes back to what we were saying before, like labor and revenue are going to be tough. So EBITDA can certainly be improved with cost of goods because it's not managed well. So I am really trying to address that issue and give people some of that operational. Hopefully some of that money can help save some teams. So in the service business, you can't fire the team and expect to continue to grow. That's kind of counterintuitive. So hopefully we could solve for that. To de novo looking like type locations, those that don't have order history. And let's restate, I don't know that I said it at the beginning. PIMS is very good because it uses transactional data. Inventory Ally is good because we use order history data, which accounts for all consumption, whether you sell it, use it in the hospital, or otherwise. And then we just optimize the turnover of that, but we make it simple. The reason we have to make it simple is because we have technicians and CSRs assigned the task of inventory management, which is really a distraction from what they should be doing, and they're not experts at it, and it's complicated. So we're making that more predictable and easy for them. So to a de novo location, what we're really focused on building out right now, because to your point, it doesn't have order history, we're adding the PIMS integration. And so the way that this works well together is that with order history, and we can establish trending analysis, then we plug in PIMS data and the transactional data where we can, and we map those together. We start to accelerate our ability to recognize changes in consumption, total consumption. So that's the marriage that really makes it work, especially in a hospital that doesn't have order history. So you and I have talked before, Ivan, about maybe establishing at least 3 months of order history, because one correction is we're not actually doing year over year type calculations. We're looking at recent trending analysis, and things you turn over frequently. We look at recent history. Things that turn over slow, we look at a longer history without getting more complicated. But that gives us abilities. When we can see the transactional data, we respond faster. We learn faster. So as long as I have access to the order history and the PIMS, it works.
Yeah, thank you for that correction. I apologize that I thought it was comparing to last year. So can you walk, because we're talking about this concept, and a lot of people don't understand inventory management. Before you started building it, I didn't understand, and I don't think I still understand it. But can you walk us from, someone listening this on the podcast, what does it look like? Just basically, what do you do when we roll out Inventory Ally? What do we need to submit to you? What do you take? And then is it like assigning a person? Do they need to count the pills? Just if you can wrap it up in a couple minute explanation, what does it look like on the floor?
Absolutely. So when you first sign up for Inventory Ally, we ask you to connect to a data source, your order history data source. One of the best ones we have is VetCove, because VetCove consolidates order history from multiple vendors. We also just recently released an integration with MWI, a direct integration with MWI, and we're talking with others. So when we first sign up, we pull all the order history in for the last 12 months. Behind the scenes, within 3 to 5 minutes, we analyze that data. We hide some items that are considered one-off. We prioritize based on the total cost and the total volume, each item, and then we assign replenishment frequencies. So high-cost, high-value items are going to be replenished every week, and some items every 2 weeks, some every 4 weeks, and a bunch of stuff every 12 weeks. We do that for you. We also then calculate what we call the min and max, so your reorder points. specific to every product. So we look at how much do you need to get through a cycle, and we add buffer stock to it so to absorb variability. To engage our system, because that's all set up automatically in about 5 minutes, you just tell us what rooms you have in the hospital, and then you tell us how much of that product you have in those rooms. Based on the total amount you have, we tell you how much you need to order. Then you just sit and hit that back over to MWI Vetco to build your order. So hospitals are going from 4 to 8 hours a week, reactively placing orders every day, to once a week, 30 to 45 minutes, and they're done. And they have what they need, so their stock outs go down, they get back to work. So we can have you actually placing your first order within about 30 minutes of sign up. And then each week we just give you a new list of items, tell us how much you have, we tell you how much to order, and you're done.
Before Sean jumps in, how can you not scale that? That sounds like an awesome process. How can you not scale to hundreds of hospitals immediately? That sounds really cool.
The limitation on scalability is process change, quite frankly. Our most successful hospitals have brand new inventory managers who have no idea what to do. The system guides them and adopts super easy, and they're off and running.
Amazing.
But a lot of people have worked really hard to establish some complex processes and systems to try to create predictability, and they're very proud, and they should be very proud of that process. But to migrate to something else and to trust the software to do it, that becomes the one thing that we have to kind of guide people through.
So why is it that the people are always the problem? No, I'm just joking. So Emmitt, so there's a lot of people that listen to our podcast are looking for innovation, and it's such a interesting and, dare I say, boring subject to innovate on, but it's brilliant because of the fact that it is a bit boring. How do people that are listening to this podcast know if they have a problem when it comes to inventory management? Like, what are the signs that they can identify to maybe reach out to you guys to explore it more?
Yeah, well, you might look at it as far as like asking questions. One of the first ones is, do you hate inventory? We might be able to make it super easy for you so you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, that's 100% of population.
Yeah, everybody said yes.
Right? I haven't met anybody that actually has said, no, this isn't really going to work for me very well. So if you hate doing inventory, if you're frustrated with how much time it takes, if you are reactively ordering, this is the one of the things I always look for, is if you're placing orders every day based on, I think we're low on that, there's a want list, there's a stock out list, you're reactively trying to keep up. Whereas Inventory Ally is going to make it proactive, so you don't have to waste your time thinking about these things. We just take care of it. If you can't take vacation because you're the only one knows how to do inventory, that's another really good call out. I see so many inventory managers who are just, even if they're on vacation, they're getting texts and emails, we're out of this, we're out of that, and they have to place orders from wherever they are in the world. It's not able to be delegated. One of the great things about Inventory Ally is we make it very easy to delegate to other people. Because we're doing all the calculations and replenishment guidance on the back end. And if there's any hesitation, the thing to keep in mind too is I used to use the phrase guidance. Inventory Ally is replenishment guidance. We don't force anything. We just help you optimize the calculations and the replenishment cycles to get everything lined up. You still have control. So that's what I would say, Sean, is if there's opportunity to say, yeah, I really don't like doing this, or it's really hard, or nobody else can do this but me, those are some good points of consideration that we can simplify it for you and make it much, much easier.
Well, I think a big one, Emmitt, that you're I'm not going to sell it for you, but the big one, I think for people that truly look at P&L at the end of the month, if your COGS line is 30%, 27%, Inventory Ally can dial it into 2021, right? Is that kind of the common number that you get down to?
So there's two pieces to it, right? Because to the point you're making, I mean, there's the P&L. But honestly, most inventory managers I talk to aren't focused on the P&L, right? They're trying to replenish the product and not run out. Their primary motivation is, I don't want Ivan to yell at me. I don't want the doctor to yell at me because we ran out of something, right? That tends to be a key motivator. So we end up with a ton of excess. They're not looking at them. So I focus there because if we can simplify their process and make it predictable and then get the P&L returns on the back end, that's our primary goal. Focus on the front line, impact the bottom line. But to lean into what you're saying, yes, if you are looking at your P&L, the two big drivers is going to be the inventory cost on the shelf. That's cost of carry. It's capital that's just sitting there not doing anything for you. We free it up, make that easier. But to your point on cost of goods sold, on average, we're driving that improvement 2 to 4 percentage points. And that's just through shrink capture that's waste. But what I'm really getting to is we optimize cost of goods for every single location, specifically to that location. Because if you really dig into cost of goods sold, There's so many variables to it. What's your margins on your products? What's your actual sales mix? Because you sell services and you sell goods, but you're measuring total cost of goods to total revenue. So that mix is important. What's your shrink? You have any buying power, any leverage associated with that? Do you have deals with buying groups or others that you're not taking advantage of? Do you have rebates you're not taking advantage of? There's so many things that go into the cost of goods, but the only lever I see people pull is you get to spend 18% of last week's revenue. That's how I can limit my cost of goods, but it exacerbates the entire problem. So not only do we have this system that makes it simple and it optimizes the replenishment and just dials it in specific to your needs, we then have a ton of dashboarding that allows us to dig into your service mix, your shrink, your margin analytics. So we'll partner with you for life to first pick that low-hanging fruit, but then identify those next levels of fruit to be picked as well.
So what you're saying, Emmitt, is if any of our listeners want to get a ninja and his team to help with their
with a black belt, with the black belt,
and want to help, want to get your guys' help, your team of ninjas with a black belt,
that's right,
to kick the ass of their inventory, you guys can help. And if our listeners want more information, how do they get it?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're thinking that inventory is hard, I'm telling you it doesn't have to be, right? So give me a call. We'll simplify it for you and we'll partner with you long term. So go to inventoryally.com and you'll start to see some information there. You can sign up. You can sign up right there to have a demo with me. I'll walk you through it. I'll answer your questions. We'll help you out and get you on the right path. You also get a 2-week free trial. So you can sign up. You can go through the steps. You can see how this thing works, see what recommendations we're having and how well they work. And then you can upgrade to a paid account. So there's no barriers to getting in. So check us out.
Seems like a pretty good plan. So we've got a couple questions because we ran out of time like we do every single time. I think Ivan gave you the former business partner associate time allowance because we're 3 minutes over. But we got a couple quick questions for you, which is a book, a YouTube video, something that you'd recommend for our listeners.
Sure. I probably recommended this last time, but I always come back to a book called The Goal. It's a fairly old book, but it's a commonplace for Ivan and I as well. It introduces what's called the theory of constraints. So while I do have a black belt in Six Sigma and project management training, and I kind of know Lean Six Sigma inside and out, I love theory of constraints because it says there's a process, and in that process, there's a bottleneck. Focus on it, you'll improve it, and the whole process gets better. But something else becomes the bottleneck, so then you tackle that next. I call it Lean Six Sigma for the normal person. So I really love The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt. And it's super easy to read and it's kind of the foundation of anything that I do. So I love that one.
Sure is. It's a base text for people in Galaxy as well. So second question that we ask Emmitt, is there another innovator in the industry that you would like to invite to this podcast?
Well, there's a number of people doing some really incredible things. And I've been really fortunate this year to start to get engaged with a lot of startups, entrepreneurs, and some really cool things that are trying to be solved within the industry. One person that Ivan, you and I have familiarity with is Sarah. Used to be Wallace, it's now Mitten, but she started a program called Spoonful, which is telemedicine, teleadvice, teletriage. Really love what she's doing to really focus more on the triage side of things to optimize the patients that are coming in the hospital versus not coming in the hospital. But also checkup is another one that I've really been impressed with, and some of the work that they're doing to try to make things more visible and insightful on the front end of operations.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.